You are listening to the Starter Girls podcast with Jennifer Loading. Whether you are starting a project, starting a business, starting a brand, or starting a movement, we are here to talk about it. And so we are missing our other partner in crime, my good friend, Amy Lafitte. But as I said in the previous show, we must go on, right? And so I am super excited. I got to jump into this really quick because I have two phenomenal runner athletes on here. And I'm so super stoked that you guys are both here today. And so I want to welcome both Nicole and Zach Bitter to our show. So welcome, guys. Super excited.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, so let me tell our listeners real quick a little bit about you guys because I've been kind of pumping this up for a few weeks. I haven't told anybody who was coming on this show. I've just been dropping these little nuggets of information. I'm like, yesterday I put something out. Y'all are going to laugh. I said, so I've got these two runners coming on. And I teased it out to my runner friends. And I'm like, one of them has a world record. It's been on Joe Rogan's podcast before. The other one's also an incredible trail runner. And so nobody was guessing yet. I was like letting it go out there. And I think with all this Corona stuff going on, they kind of didn't see the stuff. But when this goes out, you guys are going to get some really pushes on this podcast. I'm super excited. So a little bit about Nicole real quick for our listeners. Nicole's an ultra runner who specializes in the 100-mile distance. Some of her career highlights include 3 top 10 Western state finishes. And so for my non-runner people, this is huge. This is like a big accomplishment. And she also has the second fastest trail time in North America at the 100-mile race. That's incredible. And so I talk about this because my husband actually knows her from running because he's also an ultra marathon runner. And so I talked about when I sent them information, like I've never personally run 100 miles. I've done some marathons. I've never gotten that far, but I have witnessed that. I know that the tenacity and the mindset, all of that's going with it. So I think it's super incredible. And then a little bit about Zach really quick. Zach is also an incredible endurance athlete. He's a multi-world and USATF record holder. He specializes as well in the 100-mile distance. And some of his career highlights is that he has both the American and the world record in the 100-miler. Am I correct, Zach?
Yeah. I actually had the American record for quite a while and then just recently broke it and got the world record. So that was exciting.
Awesome. And you also have it in the 12-hour. Am I correct?
Yeah, you can kind of cherry pick that one. It's interesting. Like if you hit 100 miles in under 12 hours and can keep going, then you can more or less target that one as well. So I was fortunate to have a little bit of legs left in me after 100 miles, and I got the 12-hour, which is for your listeners who don't know the sport very much. They have like distance races, and there's also timed events. We see how far you can get in a specific time frame. So that one was for 12 hours distance run.
That's so awesome. I like when you said a little leg left in you after 100 miles, because you did 104 miles, right? Am I correct? It was like 104 miles.
Yeah, 104.8. Yeah. I hit 100 miles at 11 hours and 19 minutes and then started kind of hobbling a bit, but got around the track a few more times.
That is incredible.
I thought he was going to drop after the 100, and I was there, and I just couldn't believe when he kept going then. I was tired.
Yeah.
Screwing for him. So
yeah, well, and you're an incredible runner too. So I got to give you both kudos because, like I said, I've been at those events. Not all the ones you guys have been at, but I have been at some of these 100-mile races. I've been at the aid stations. I've actually paced Ryan in a 20-mile loop at these. So I've seen what it takes to go through that. Like I've seen the training, I've seen the grit and all of the things that are required for that. I mean, it's a lot. There's a lot to it, and really, Ryan always talks about how you really don't ever have that day where you just train out. I'm going to go out and run 100 miles for that 100-mile race. You just train and then you just get out there and you run and you do it. And it really just becomes about mindset. It's all that. So you guys are incredible. I think it's incredible.
It is interesting. Like the 100-mile, I think especially in ultra running in general or endurance running in general, I should say, is really unique in that aspect where if you go out for a 30-mile long run, you're only not even a third of the way there for race distance. Whereas when you look at a lot of elite marathon training plans, these guys and gals, they'll hit maybe 18 miles at their goal marathon pace. So they don't have a whole lot of like margin to continue with before they know like, okay, I can do this, or I can hit my goal, or I'm on pace for my goal. Whereas with 100 miles, a little different. You're kind of guessing to a degree as to whether you're going to feel good at certain points.
Right. Well, and yeah, exactly. I mean, that's some of the things that Ryan always talks about too when he's going through that is that I mean, he may have a loop, if he's doing a 20-mile loop, for instance, where he's picking up and then he has to gauge, maybe he's not feeling good that next loop, and so you take it down or whatever. So yeah, you do have a little bit more, I'm assuming, a margin for error in there, but it's incredible because I just know, like, I've seen him go through so many of those and I just think it's neat. So some questions that came up, I really want to talk about this. And I do want to mention also, I didn't get to finish with Nicole, that she is an attorney. And so you, by rights, you guys are both doing incredible things, even, in the sport and out of the sport. And so I think that's awesome. Now, I know what I want to ask you guys that I think is just kind of a fun question is that, do you guys train together or do you have like your separate trainings that you do? This is kind of those, because we talked last week about one of the girls on our podcast that started a business with her husband. And I was like, wow, that's impressive. Like, you started this business with your husband, and that takes discipline and all the things that go with that too. So do you guys train together or do you train separately?
Yeah, sorry about that. Our dog just saw the UPS guy.
That's okay.
I tried to hit mute, but
yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, we do. Actually, we did this morning. It works out fairly decent. Like a lot of times, if we line up our training so that the intensity I'm trying to target for the day matches the intensity that Nicole's trying to target, we can kind of just structure things that way. And Nicole stays super busy, like you said, with her job. Definitely more busy than I do, but it's we both work from home essentially as well for the most part. So we have a little more flexibility in that where we can kind of plan our schedules to match up a little easier maybe than we would have to if we had to go to into an office or we worked separate shifts or something like that.
Right. I love that. So fun question. I didn't even get y'all to tell me about you yet. I'm going to have you do that in just a minute. How did you two meet? Because obviously you're both runners. So how did this all happen?
Yeah, so we actually were very fortunate to meet at camp for RWB was the organization. So it gets veterans into trail running. And so it was actually in Texas outside of San Antonio. So Liza Howard put that on. So we will forever be grateful to her for inviting us. And we had known each other before because we both run for Ultra. But we started talking at the camp, and I guess the rest was history.
That's awesome.
What does that guy say about we met on a run or what?
A good experience. Yeah, what was it? What did he say? You guys literally ran into one another or something like that?
Yeah, right. Ran. That's so awesome. That's awesome. Well, yeah. And the good thing is you don't have to worry about trying to find the common thread, right? The commonality. Yeah. You both like to run. Yes. It's not like one of you likes to run and the other doesn't. Because if you don't, and especially with the time commitment that you guys are putting into this sport, it's not just, hey, we're going out for a 5K today. This is like real training for you two and takes time and everything. And so, yeah, it's great that you guys have that commonality between you. So I think that's awesome. So a little bit what I want to know, and maybe you can share with us a little bit, because one of the things I always like to talk about is like the mindset behind all of this stuff, like when you're doing this. And so for you, Zach, going in and having this world record, you already had, you basically, am I right that you got 2 records like in this one event? Am I correct? So
yeah.
You did. Mm-hmm. Okay. So when you were doing this, because like you said, you had a little leg left to get, do this. What is this process? And Nicole, I want you to chime in on this too, because you've done 100 miles too. So this is going to require some mindset on your part too. So what does this look like for you guys when you are going after something huge like this? Like what does that mindset look like for you when you're doing this, tackling the training and preparing for this? What does that all look like?
Yeah, I think it's, because to go back to what we talked about earlier, where it's really hard to kind of visualize running 100 miles when your longest run is maybe, in the 30 to 40 mile range leading into it, is you can kind of gain a lot from the experience within the sport. So, my mindset was a lot different when I did my first 100 miler, and I'm sure Nicole's was as well. And then you do a few of them, or you do a bunch of different ultra marathons, you go through like a variety of different training plans and you kind of find out what works for you. And then you have at least a little more background to lean on. You kind of know, like, here's some big things I shouldn't do and some big things I need to make sure I do. And you start to kind of whittle away at it. And for some folks catch on quicker than others, sometimes it takes longer too. When I ran my first flat 100 miler in 2013, and broke the American record for 100 miles on that. My next goal was to break the world record for 100 miles. And I thought I would probably do it in the next year. And it took me almost 6. So sometimes you got to learn a little more than you think you might at first go of it. But, if I look back at kind of my mindset in the 100 miler where I broke the world record, there was a lot of points where I was reflecting back upon points in my training plan or points in my other races that I just wouldn't have had if it had been my first one.
Right, right. Nicole, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's so important to just hang tough and just keep fighting through the hard times, because during a race, you'll have so many high points and so many low points. At a 100-mile distance, you really run the gamut. And so I find that during my best races, and I know Zach will say the same thing about his 100-mile world record, is you'll still have those low points. So it's finding a way to overcome those during the course of a race. And even more broadly, when we think about running, just you'll have so many times throughout your lifetime, if you're a lifetime runner, of when you have high points and low points, right? So it's really akin to life in general. You just have to keep fighting and keep powering through those hard times, and ultimately you come to a good time.
Right. When you hit that finish line, right?
Right.
Well, I know on Zach, I will quote this because I saw this on your page and I actually wrote this down. It said here that you love the trials of the journey as much as the results. So I think that fits perfectly with what we're talking about right now. And you just kind of embracing it as you go through and recognizing that, yeah, you're going to have those moments. And I think, one of the things the guest that was in here earlier, we were talking about that, is that you just assume going into that, there's going to be moments where it's not going to be what you want it to be, but you take that risk on and you say, I'm going to get through them. And so I think that's great. Dawn Grunagel was on our show. I'm assuming you guys know who she is. Amazing girl, 3-time Olympic trial qualifier. Love her. She coached my kids for a little while. She was on here and she was talking about her tool belt, because we asked her the same question, and she was talking about how, she relies on her tool belt. She does that training repeatedly so that when she shows up on that day for that race, when I said, what's your mindset look like? She's like, I rely on my tool belt. And I think that's so great. And I'm assuming you guys are doing the same thing. You're building your confidence by doing that repetition over and over. So awesome. Yeah. So, question. So I know, Zach, I know you were in track and cross country. Am I correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Okay. So have you guys been running forever? Like, was this like you started out when you were little, like running was your thing, or did you just one day decide to start running?
You want me to answer that?
Yeah, we've both been running forever. But forever. Similar stories. Yeah.
Nicole got into it probably a little more seriously at a younger age than I did.
Okay.
And, she was, a lot of people in the ultra running community, I don't think probably realize it, but Nicole was a pretty incredible runner in high school and college as well. State meet stuff, school records and D1 recruits and stuff like that. So she had a pretty good running resume just in general before getting into ultra running. And, I was a decent runner in high school and college. I went to a D3 school and really loved the sport, learned that I really liked the long run as kind of my favorite workout of the week. So I just kind of started skewing more stuff towards that, which kind of led me to ultra running.
That's awesome. That's awesome. No, and I remember seeing Nicole at some races, because I ran a couple of the trail races where she was at. And I remember seeing her zip through there and coming out. I think I was at one of the old ones at Tyler back when Dave Hannenberg used to do one. I remember seeing you there.
So great.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was a fun run. I remember the year, I think I want to say it was the very last year he did. I did the short one, but I think I even ran the longer one the year before. So I remember that run, and I loved all his races.
Yes, no, absolutely. Miss all the Texas races.
Yeah, absolutely. Dave Hannenberg.
And Texas in general.
Yeah. And Hannenberg put on a good race. He put on good races. So my daughter, actually my middle one is a cross-country runner at Southern Arkansas right now. And so we always talk about that because she ran several of those races with me that he did. So yeah. What was that?
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. There was that one that was at Cedar Hills that they used to do in the nighttime. I forgot the name of it, where we would run in the evening.
Yeah.
Did you do that one?
And I loved that Possum Kingdom.
Yes,
race.
that was it. Possum Kingdom. Yes. So I remember watching you do some races and stuff. So I know you are an incredible runner. I know that.
Oh,
so
thanks.
That's awesome. So let me get back to my questions, because now I lost my train of thought where I was. It's so good here. I'm like get so wrapped up in this. So a couple things. Let me ask you this question. What do you guys, I know, Zach, you also do coaching. Am I correct? Are you coaching
Yeah.
like athletes, I'm assuming?
Yeah, mostly runners, but skewed towards ultra marathon, but I'll
Okay.
get marathon runners and some of the below distances as well.
Okay. So I guess maybe this question will be directed to you. And then Nicole, you can chime in too. What do you love most about what you get to do? Because I know you're also podcasting too. So tell us what you love most about what you're getting to do now.
Yeah, I mean, and that kind of goes back a little bit to like what you said before, where one of the reasons I love the sport of running and ultra marathoning specifically is just like building that process or designing that plan and then trying to, learn from things that worked and things that didn't. And then ultimately kind of putting together a training schedule and watching that improvement happen. What I tell myself is if I ever get to the point where I need to run a good race in order to enjoy the sport, then I'm no longer interested in the sport, because I should be able to go into a race and have a bad day and still be satisfied with that whole process because I had fun getting fit enough to start the race in the first place. So as a coach, it's kind of the same thing, but you're doing it and you're helping other people. And, my background was in education. I was a middle school and high school teacher for about 5 years in Wisconsin before moving out west. And, that's one of the things that I really enjoy about the coaching side is it's like educating people, but on the one-to-one individual level and helping people kind of look at where they're at, where they've been and kind of where they want to be. And then looking at their lifestyle and kind of navigating all the little nuances that people have with their job, their family, their friends, their training goals, and all that stuff. It's just fun to kind of piece that stuff together and help them kind of develop a plan that's going to get them to that starting line feeling like they enjoyed the process, but also hopefully having a good day too.
Absolutely. And who better to train you to do that, right? I think that's awesome. That's awesome. What about you, Nicole? Because I know you're an attorney, right? And so do you find that like a lot of the things that you use in running, like the mindset and stuff, does that roll over into what you're doing into your career?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think the longer I've been in ultra running, the more that I find I'm willing to push more from a career perspective as well and believe in myself and just have more confidence overall that I can get through things and take on newer roles. So I find that I'm much more comfortable in larger roles than I would have expected. And just have more confidence. So I really appreciate that aspect of running. I think that's been huge for me from just a career perspective as well.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So
yeah.
Good lessons.
Yeah. Well, and it does. I think they do roll over. I think a lot of it, I mean, that's why I love talking. I really, honestly, on this show, I interview both athletes and entrepreneurs. I really love talking to the athletes. That's my favorite part because I think there's just, especially when you get some of these people like you guys that are just really hardcore at what they're doing, because it's not just I'm going out and having fun, a playtime. This is real for you guys. It's a real thing that you're doing. And it takes a lot of dedication and time. And so I really like getting into that part of it. But I find that a lot of the people, like I said earlier in the show, that are athletes are also entrepreneurs and they do carry a lot of the stuff that they learned or they're using in that area over with them. So I think that's awesome. So
I think a lot of similar attributes. I think you're right. I see that a lot too.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. So I have a question for you because I know Ryan had mentioned too that Maria Emmerich was on our podcast. I got her to come on here and I worked with her very early on because as I mentioned to you guys, I have a rare nerve condition. And so when I was going through that, I actually had to change my diet and I had to go keto. And that's when I actually took up a lot of the running was during that time. And so I reached out to Maria Emmerich because I was trying to figure out how do I navigate this low carb thing. And at the time I did this was before anybody really knew about keto. So she was like one of the first people that had come to me. Well, she came on my show. I had her come on here. I'm like, I got to get you on here. I want you on here badly. So I got her on. And then Zach, your name came up in our podcast. And what was so funny about all of this, the irony of this was, a few months later, I was talking to Ryan about this and I'm like, who do you know in your running community that's like badass? Like, who do you know, right? Like, give me some names. And Nicole's name comes up to me and I'm like, okay, I want to talk to her. Like, I really want to talk to her. And then he mentioned to me Zach Bitter. And I'm like, wait a minute, are they together? I did not know this. I need both of them. So
they're 2 for 1.
Yeah, exactly. I need both of you here. And so then he said, yeah, well, you remember Maria Emmerich mentioned his name on your show. And I said, oh yeah, I forgot about that. So this question I really want to ask you because this is the one I want to know because of the low carb. And I will tell you, I don't know if Ryan ever mentioned this to you, but he did a race at, I want to say it was Brazos Bend down south. I want to say it was year 2016. We were hardcore keto that year. And he went there to do the 100-miler. And that year he broke the course record completely keto. I'd sent him with like granola and he ate pickles. Seriously, that was like his meal. And so we were like so stoked about it because that was the first year we had done keto. And we were like, nobody really believed that you could do a 100-miler and be doing that. You know what I mean? And so it was kind of a big thing. It was like, yes, we did this. We made this work and it happened. And so what I want to know from you, I guess, is what does your meal plan, like what does this look like for you with your training? Do you vary it up? Are you doing low carb? What are you doing? Do you have a routine that works for you?
Yeah, and I think where my like take on kind of keto or high fat, low carb maybe deviates from the average individual who's taking on that sort of a nutritional approach is just my lifestyle changes pretty drastically depending on where I am in training. So the way I like to describe it is if you took a calendar year and you randomly picked a day off of it, if you pick a day where it's after a race, I might barely move. But if you pick a day that's like in the middle of my peak training, I might be going out for a 30-mile run with 10,000 feet of climbing and descending or something like that. So like those 2 days are energetically way different.
Right.
So since I periodize my training that way, I also kind of periodize my nutrition, but I periodize it within the context of high fat, low carb. So when the intensity is low and the volume is low, or I'm in off season, kind of more recovery or very early stage of training, I'm staying pretty close to your classical ketogenic diet of, like really low, 50 grams of carbohydrate a day, sometimes in that neighborhood. And then as I start building up kind of the volume within my training plan, I'll bring back a little bit more carbohydrate. And then when I kind of hit peak training, where I'm putting in upwards of 20 hours a week worth of running, strength work, mobility stuff, then, my carbs will be at their highest, but they're still relatively low compared to what you're going to see in a lot of endurance training programs. So it's usually maybe around 20% of my intake at its highest. And during that phase of training, I'm also doing some deload weeks, which are basically, you'll do 2 or 3 weeks where you're kind of building up, and then you just need to let your body kind of reset for a little bit. And I'll spend a week where I'll reduce volume and intensity. And during those weeks, I'll also supplement that time frame to kind of do a little more of a reset in terms of kind of bring those carbs back down to those really lower ketogenic levels, since I'm not doing as much intensity or volume during that time. And that's what I find kind of has worked for me.
Okay.
I've been doing it for maybe about 8.5 years or so now.
That's awesome. So you were doing this before everybody knew about keto. Yeah. It's so funny because, when I remember when I used to talk about it to people, I just remember all the, all the stigma that was wrapped around it. Everybody had so much, I don't know, they had so much input on it, and I didn't have a choice at that time. It really was about, I had to get better. I wanted to get off all my medication. Mm-hmm. So for me, it was about that. But I will tell you, for me, even now, I still do fairly low carb. I don't do keto every single day. I don't work up, but I pretty much do low carb every day. I just feel so much better. Like I have more energy. I just can think clearer and I just function so much better. So I think that's awesome. But I did want to bring that up, like I said, because she did say your name on this show. And I'm like, I got to ask this question. So Nicole, do you follow that same kind of plan or do you do differently? What's your meal plan look like?
I don't quite follow it as strictly as Zach does, but he is definitely the chef in our house. So I eat a lot of his meals. But historically, I've been pretty low carb. Even since I've been in college. So I just found that I functioned well using that approach and I've kind of stuck with it. So
yeah, no, it makes sense. It does make sense. And that's what I said, even for me, I notice a big difference. It's like, you don't want to be eating ice cream before you go run, you want to lay off all that stuff. So yeah, you don't want to be doing that. So that's awesome. Okay. So let me ask you guys this question really quick. So who would you say would be your biggest influencer? Zach, I'm gonna let you start this, and then Nicole, I want you to chime in on this, but who would you say would be your biggest influencer?
Just in general, or?
Yeah, I mean, it can be it can be whatever you want. I mean, if you want to tie it to the running, that's fine, or maybe it's somebody in life. It doesn't, whatever fits you.
Yeah, I think it's a tough question because I think for me, I've been in the sport just long enough now where I tend to see different people from time to time and draw inspiration from them. And, then it's like there's this, I feel like I'm slighting someone by naming naming
Right.
one. But
Yeah.
when I first got into the sport, I think, it was interesting because there was a guy named Mike Morton who had kind of come back into the sport after taking a bit of a hiatus due to some injuries and some life work type obligations and things like that. And he was really an interesting guy to kind of follow as I started taking this sport seriously, because he was, for one, the first person to win. I think he was the first person to win the Western States 100 without living out west. And I mean, he lived in Florida, I believe, at the time, and he had the course record for a while there too. And then took, I think, almost 10 years off, came back in sport, just won a ton of kind of flat runnable 100-milers. And then at the age of 42, went to Western States and got third place overall and broke, at the time, the Masters record. And I mean, the two guys who beat him that year was Tim Olson and Rob Carr, who are two of the best Western States 100 male runners in the history of that event. So
Wow.
It was cool to watch him kind of reinvent himself or reintroduce himself into the sport. And I just remember one of the first podcasts I listened to with him on it, someone just asked him, well, what goes through your mind during these 100-milers, and how do you kind of get your head wrapped around it? And I mean, he just kind of whittled it down to its core. And he said, well, I went there to run 100 miles. So I just go there and I run 100 miles.
I love it. Wow.
Because it's easy to complicate things when you're dealing with the logistics of running 100 miles, dealing with, making sure your crew has what they need to take care of you, managing your own stress and your own energy and getting spot to spot. So to be able to kind of simplify it and execute, I think, is a pretty rare gift.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. I liked it. I like what you said that he said. It just simplified it down. I went to run 100 miles. So I like that. So Nicole, did you want to add anything as far as influencers for you?
Yeah, so I actually have to say, and this is cheesy, but Zach, you are a good influence on me, because I think you always have such a positive attitude about running. So you truly love to run. And I think from my perspective, that really is great, because I can tend to just get very achievement type driven and kind of focus on running to just even beat my best time, or I have goals such as that. So I appreciate Zach's mentality that he just truly loves running, even if he doesn't have a good outcome. So a race doesn't go well and he has a positive attitude. So I think that's great. But I personally have also just drawn a lot of inspiration from just watching the women at the Olympic trials. So just watching how many women qualified, to me, was so inspiring. And I think that's something in the future I would love to try and run a fast marathon. So I think all of those women kind of recently inspired me.
That's awesome. And I like that you said, Zach. I think that's so cute. I like it. It's so nice. I love it. So one of the questions really quick that came up to me was, because you guys are in Arizona and there's, I guess, a lot of really good runners out there. Do you guys get to collaborate with some of them and run?
Yeah, a little bit. There's definitely, Arizona, especially this time of year, gets pretty popular for the marathon, and below pros come out this way to navigate the winter months. But there's a good group of ultra runners up in Flagstaff as well that have kind of found their way this way. So we'll get out and run with folks every once in a while, but more often than not, we're running kind of by ourselves, though.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Once in a while, it works out to meet up with some friends. We were supposed to have a ultra athlete summit that we were excited about, but given kind of everything going on in the world, thankfully, it got canceled for the right reasons. But that's another opportunity. We get to run with friends when we obviously travel a lot for work. And so it's nice because it's an opportunity to see lots of friends and meet up for runs, which is great.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So one of the other things that was brought up to me is that when you were on, Zach, when you were on Joe Rogan's podcast, I have to mention that really quick, which I think is so huge, and congratulations on that. Wow. So I think you had mentioned something about running coast to coast. Am I correct?
Yeah, that was a bit of a long-term project that I'm putting together right now. It'll probably happen around this time next year.
Okay. That was the question. Yep. That was the question that was brought to me, is how's that coming along?
Yeah, it's a process for sure. And the route is San Francisco to New York City. So I've been interested in that route for quite a while, but I didn't really have maybe the ambition or the reason to like put it on the short list, so to speak. So I'd met a guy who, or heard of a guy, and then eventually met him, who has a charity called Fight for the Forgotten, where they build wells in the Congo for the Pygmy tribes. And he's recently partnered to put together a bully education program that they're hoping to roll out in a lot of the schools in the United States to help kind of create awareness around bullying, like the hows, the whys, and what to do in those situations. And I thought that was a pretty cool message that he had. And so I'm going to be doing that with the hopes to kind of raise some awareness and funds for his organizations.
That's awesome. So what do we have coming up next? What's the next race? What's going to be happening after we get through this coronavirus?
Oh, we don't know.
No.
That's the crazy part.
Yeah.
So Zach was supposed to go to London to run another fast 100-mile that has gotten canceled. I was going to do a run called Madeira off the coast of Portugal, and that got canceled. So I think the next race we have at this point is Western States. So assuming that goes forward, but then I think we're just trying to figure out, depending on kind of the state of the world and what's going on. I mean, at this point, it feels like obviously there's so many more important things going on that it's hard to even think about running, but it is kind of hard to kind of get a perspective of, should we kind of change our training because they're not going to go forward, but we'll figure it out.
Right.
That's a good thing about running. You can do it outside. So we're so blessed at this time to have an outlet.
Yes.
Everything closed.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I said that the other day. They closed my gym down.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no. I mean, I run outside too, but I'm like, they closed my gym down, so then we all have to regroup. But yeah, that is the good thing about running, is that you can just you can take it any time, and you can up it down at whatever you need to do.
Yeah.
So, and I agree with you. There is a lot going on right now, but I don't know if you're like me. It's nice to try to keep focused on something, because it takes your mind off of that a little bit and gives you something else to kind of look forward to. So I think that's awesome.
We were talking about it this morning. It's kind of like, it's nice to have an understanding of what your goals are, what you're kind of looking towards. And this time is hard because we're all kind of maybe at a bit of a standstill with a lot of things in life.
Exactly. So Zach, do you want to tell us a little bit about your podcast that you have going on? Share that with our listeners so they know where to come find you with that, and give us a little bit of details on that.
Yeah. So I co-host a podcast called Human Performance Outliers with Dr. Shawn Baker, and we do a lot of different stuff actually on there. When we started the podcast, our angle was kind of that we both followed kind of a high-fat, low-carb type of diet for our athletics, but we were on opposite ends of the spectrum from what types of athletics. I'm kind of a freakishly long-distance runner, and or extreme endurance runner, and Shawn is a short, intense athlete. He's got some age group world records in like Compex 2 rowing machines. He's competed at the Highland Games. He was a professional rugby player for a while. So he's got an interesting kind of athletic background. And since we started it, we've interviewed the people from athletes, doctors, professors that are interested in kind of, dietary, nutritional approaches, both mainstream thought stuff as well as kind of tier stuff that are a little more like fringe, I guess you would call it, or non-mainstream. And we've also done some dives into things like regenerative agricultural practices. We've had a lot of farmers, both conventional as well as kind of holistic type management people on the show, just to give us the rundown on that sort of stuff. So we basically find something we get interested in, and then bring on someone on the show. And we've been fortunate enough to have that podcast grow enough where a lot of like top tier PhDs and doctors are willing to come on and drop some knowledge bombs on us every once in a while.
That's incredible. I like it. That's so awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Wow. That's awesome. So very cool. Okay. Well, I forgot to ask you these questions in the beginning, so I got to drop them on here because we're going to loosen up a little bit. These are my rapid fires. I just want to ask you these because they're kind of fun. So morning or night people, which are you?
Probably morning.
I'm definitely probably morning.
Yeah.
Nicole is probably perfectly in the middle and can kind of gravitate one way or the other.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Agnostic.
It works out. You'd probably do what you got to do, right? You got to be up, you get up.
Running's kind of a morning sport.
It is.
I think it makes me kind of more morning, but I definitely could lean the other way.
Gotcha. All right, dog or cat people.
Well, by default, I'm a dog person.
Dog.
Nicole's definitely a dog person. I was, I guess, maybe indifferent. I had cats as a kid, but never had a dog. And then when Nicole and I got married, I adopted our senior dog, Stella. And I guess I'm growing into a dog person is maybe the way to put it.
That's so funny. Wait, just wait. I don't know. You guys haven't been married long. You might end up with more. We always joke about that.
Oh,
I was gonna say,
we'll always have a dog. That's
yes,
for sure,
I
Nicole.
joke about it because I don't know if Nicole knows this, but Ryan grew up on a farm in Montana. They're ranchers, and so they never really had pets. They were just kind of farmhand. You know what I mean? And like farm animals. And so I grew up with a lot of animals. Like we've had turtles, and I think my parents even had like a baby alligator at one time or something. I don't know. But it's so funny because when we first got married, we had a hamster. And then we got a dog, and then we ended up with more dogs and cats and rabbits and geckos and snakes because the kids brought the pets. So it all kind of came together. So I'm like, if you stay together for a while, you might have more there. Right. I think that's great.
You never know.
Exactly.
Hopefully,
Yes.
Hopefully many more pets.
Backyard javelina or something like that.
Yeah, you could. Exactly. Get yourself a really good running dog, right? All right. So last question I want to ask you on this part would be, okay, so favorite food.
You want to go first or?
Yeah. I really like salmon. I don't know. I could probably eat it every day.
For me, it's a toss up between eggs or just a ribeye steak.
I like both of those. I like all of those things you just said.
And if I could have all three of them together, then it's just, I'll even take your salmon.
Yeah, that's actually a really good low carb meal right there. All of that. You get it all. You get your fats and protein. You got it all in there. It's good. I love it. This has been incredible. So let me ask you this question because we could stay here for a while. I don't want to keep y'all forever. I could keep you here forever. So if our listeners want to find you, what is the best way? I know, Zach, you have a website. I don't know if you do, Nicole, or what's the best way for them to reach you guys?
For me, the website's kind of the one-stop shop where you can link to everything else at zachbitter.com. Social media-wise, I'm most active on Instagram, which is at @ZachBitter, and then Twitter, which is at @ZBitter.
Okay. And I can put this, when I post this, I can put that contact information in there. But I love that. It's just Zach Bitter. That's how mine is. It's just my name. You can't, if you can spell it, you got it, right?
Yeah.
And then Nicole.
Keeps it simple.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm on Instagram at NK Bitter and on Facebook.
Okay.
I do not have a website, but maybe in the future I can aspire to that.
Yeah, you guys can maybe put one together. Y'all could have a joint one. So this has been so much fun. Like I said, I could keep you guys here forever. I've got a lot of questions I could ask you, but I know you guys are busy. And I do want to tell you, thank you so much for being on here, taking time out of your day. I know, like I said, it's not the best of circumstances, but I do appreciate you jumping on here. And I know our listeners are going to absolutely love this, hearing from you. And thank you so much. So with that, I think we're about ready to wrap it up. And so I'm going to close out with our mantra. It is a great day to be brave. You're not getting any younger. You might as well start now. You have the power to change your circumstances any day you decide. Let today be that day. Rise up, be amazing, be you, do you. And one thing I do want to add to our listeners, I forgot to say, if you enjoy our podcast, be sure you give us a rating both on iTunes and Facebook because we cannot do this without you. So with that, thank you, Nicole. Thank you, Zach Bitter. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Keep running.
Yeah, thank you.
Keep inspiring and doing what you do. And we appreciate you. You guys take care, be safe, and be kind to one another. We'll see you next time.
Take care.